The phone calls keep ringing, and the guests keep pouring in, and
That's
why
right,
not?
Dave.
It's the morning news. Everybody wants a piece of this show, right?
That's right, Dave.
And we're going to use it to convey some information about one of the topics that we talk about, we're fearful of.
Yeah,
we see what happens when our forests burn. We see the devastation to communities, our air quality. It's just it's not just here, it's all across the West, and we need to do something about it, and our next guest hopes to be able to do that. Hillary Franz. Yeah, good morning.
Washington State Commissioner of Public Lands, Hillary Franz. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming on with us. Boy, we know that 2020 was a tough fire season. Some 800,000 acres burned, 1,600 wildfires. We've certainly had worse fire seasons, that's for sure. You've been trying to get a dedicated funding source for wildfire response, forest restoration, community resilience strategies for some time. What do you think is going to be the key to making this successful this time?
Well, we have spent a lot of time trying to build the awareness with the legislature and with the public about how critical this crisis is. As you mentioned, 800,000 acres burned last year in 2020. Frankly, just over Labor Day, we had 600,000 acres burn in 72 hours. We had hundreds of residents flee their homes on the west side of the state, east side of the state. We lost an entire town, the town of Malden, in just a few hours. And tragically, we lost a little boy's life as his family tried to outrun that fire, the Cold Spring fire. It was tragic. It was frankly 2020, 2018, and 2014 through 2016 were some of our most tragic fire seasons. And every single year, we are consistently spending over $153 million just fighting fires, just reacting to the smoke and flames, and trying to protect lives and do everything we can. But in Washington State, we have underinvested for too long in wildfire response and having the air resources, the firefighters, the engines, all of the equipment we need to get on those fires quickly and get them contained. And this last Labor Day firestorm, we had skeleton crews in every corner of the state doing everything they could to protect the communities. But it's too little, and unfortunately, oftentimes it's too late. So we are pushing for a dedicated revenue that would ensure that we have those wildfire resources up front, those aircraft, the equipment, the firefighters. We're dependent on ourselves, not hoping that the federal government has resources, because by the time we're on fire, California, Oregon, Colorado, they're already fighting those fires, and we come up too short. We're also seeking funding to get at the root of the issue. We have a forest health crisis in Washington State, and we have a goal of restoring 1.25 million acres of forest over the next 20 years. That's federal, state, private land. And lastly, we have many communities in the state, over 2 million homes alone in Washington that are at risk of wildfire, and communities like Malden that, as you can see, just in a few hours can be completely destroyed. So we're trying to bring in the resources to help those communities be more resilient, everything from fuel breaks around the community to helping people create defensible space on their home, their neighborhood, their town.
You, along with Representative Larry Springer of Kirkland, have introduced House Bill 1168, which would do that, which would create this dedicated funding source. And I take it you want people to get behind House Bill 1168, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. We spend, again, $153 million a year reacting to smoke and flames versus having those resources up front to keep the fire small, keep the damage and the cost to lives and homes down. It saves us money in the long run by investing up front.
Well, where does the money come from?
So what we have experienced, I have been all over the state, traveling to community after community and speaking with legislators, east and west, Republican and Democrat. Everyone agrees on the what. Everyone agrees we have to be investing in these three areas: wildfire response, forest restoration, community resilience. Where people don't agree is how we're going to pay for it. Where's that money going to come from? Yeah. So this year we decided we're really good at the what. What is the problem, and why do we have this problem, and what do we need to do about it? We're working with the legislature to help come up with critical funding sources to fund it. And so that's the conversations we're having right now in Olympia with a bipartisan group of legislators, it could be multiple funding sources, but we are working to make sure. My job is to make sure that I have the resources to protect our communities and our firefighters, and I'm going to fight for those resources until we get them.
What do we think we need? How much money are we talking about? If we spend $153 million a year in response to fires, what sort of fund reserve are we looking at there, Ms. Franz?
What we're currently looking at is around $125 million a biennium. So it's $125 million over 2 years, and that would enable us to hire more firefighters, increase our air resources, increase our funding to our local fire districts. As you know, these are oftentimes many volunteer firefighters with limited equipment, limited training, limited personnel. We would be driving resources down there oftentimes first to the fire line. They know their community best. They are quickest on the fire. In addition to that, we have about 400,000 acres of unprotected land in Washington State that have no protection from a local fire district or state that we would bring into protection.
I remember the last time you spoke with us, we talked about the importance of the aerial aspect to fighting, given our steep hills and all of that, and how antiquated our aircraft were, bullet holes from Vietnam or whatever, and having to borrow from Montana. And as you say, just when we need things most, the rest of the West is cooking then too. So would we be able to slowly replace aircraft with this sort of a program?
That's exactly right. So we would, this particular funding just in the first few years would get us 2 new fixed-wing planes, upgrading and modernizing our aging QE helicopters that you just mentioned. The other thing we would get is added infrared night vision technology. One of the things we currently are hampered with is that fires continue to blaze through the night, but we aren't able to fly our air resources and fight those flames in the nighttime, which limits us and allows the fire to only grow and expand. And as you mentioned last year, I mean, in the midst of, we had 56 fires on Labor Day. The next day we had 24 fires. We were fighting every one of those in every corner of the state. We only had 10 helicopters and a few contract fixed-wing planes to fight that. We needed more air resources, and we fought to get them at the federal level. They were already fully utilized in California and Oregon. We were able to secure one DC-10, I believe, out of Montana for a little while, but it was limited. I mean, that's all we could get.
Do other states have dedicated funds?
Other states have, it's very different across the board. California is probably the most resourced, as you can imagine. It's in the billions that they fund. It probably comes from multiple different funding sources, just like ours will. But they get a set budget. Our current set budget is around $40 million.
So
it's small compared to how much we spend.
Yeah, really.
So not to be cynical.
And the reason why you need that money up front is if I'm waiting until the fires are burning and now I'm able to put in a call to get resources from the federal level, like I said, they're all gone. They're not available because our fire season starts way later than other states. And so they're already being fully utilized versus having those resources up front because it's in our budget. We can contract or we can purchase them.
Not to be cynical or anything, but because they smelt a lot of smoke and felt some heat on the west side, might that open eyes and open wallets to this idea?
And I would tell you that it's unfortunate, but you do tend to get far more interest and assistance from a very full list of legislators when we had what we experienced last year. Not only did we have the worst air quality in the world again since, 2018 we had that, the worst air quality in the world from Spokane to Seattle. We also suffered a pretty significant number of fires on the west side of the state, including the one in Bonnie Lake, where hundreds of homes were of residents were evacuated and a few homes lost. So, I think unfortunately for too long, wildfire has been seen as an east side issue, not an entire Washington state issue. But the fact is we're all paying for it. And we not only pay for it in our health and our quality of life, but we're paying for it out of the state budget. And I think more and more people, as they see, the other thing they're seeing is that it's not an anomaly, right? It isn't, oh, gosh, this is just a rare thing for us to have this fire. Probably won't happen for another 10 years. No, we're having it every single year.
Yeah. So we need $125 million worth of prevention versus what would then amount to $300 million worth of cure over 2 years, right?
Yeah.
That's what I would say. I'd say, we're already going to pay for it. The question is whether you pay for it to react to smoke and flames, or you're going to pay for it up front, keep the damage down, the loss of life down, and actually help protect our communities and restore our forests.
Just like Valvoline motor oil. You could pay me now. You could pay me later.
That's right. House Bill 1168. House Bill 1168. We will be following it, and we hope to talk to you in the future when we can celebrate that we have a dedicated funding source to protect our communities.
Do we know when hearings will be held and people can do that remote call-in stuff?
Yep. We have our first hearing this coming Friday, and it's starting in the House, and we'll have our first hearing this coming Friday, obviously virtual, and then our hope is to get it out and exec out and moving in through appropriations and over to the Senate, and hopefully we will secure this by the end of legislative session.
Best of good luck. All the citizens in our entire state deserve to know that we're doing all that we can to prevent fires before they fight, and that we have before they flare, and that we have the resources to deal with them adequately when they do kick up. So appreciate your time, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Be safe, everyone.